Hey guys, and welcome to another Game Explained discussion. I'm your host, Andre Sigers, and this time we're joined by Derek Bindner, Ash Paulson, and special guest Chris Kirbopher15 Niosi from his YouTube channel, Kirbopher15, to discuss all the Smash Bros. Updates from this past week. So let's get started. Alright guys, so this was actually a super eventful week. I mean, even after the big news just kind of kept on coming.
Yeah.
And that started right away on Monday. Actually, there were a couple updates on Monday, of course. There was a Raymond Trophy, which we already discussed in detail, and then there were the character announcements, both on the same day. But even though we've already covered the Raymond Trophy a lot, I still think there's just a little bit more we can add to it. Because we haven't actually discussed the trophy itself. Because even though we discussed everything around the trophy and Rayman and Ubisoft, we didn't talk about the trophy. So real quick, I think the trophy itself, it's kind of cool looking, although I know a lot of people think he looks drunk, which brings up a second point we didn't discuss before, and that is the official Rayman Twitter account tweeted another version of this trophy, that looks slightly different, and I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on what the deal with that could be.
It's really weird. I mean, I guess maybe they possibly heard, the kind of internet outcry how drunk he looked, and kind of wanted to correct that, but it's kind of strange. I don't necessarily think that could be the case either.
Yeah, I mean, the only thought I had is that the quality doesn't look quite the same as the one that we saw for the update, so maybe it's the 3DS version of the trophy. That's the only idea I could really come up with, but yeah, it is kind of strange to have two different versions of the same trophy. The only other time we've really seen that is at least with Melee, where they had two different versions of the trophies for the each of the main characters. One when you go through Classic and one when you go through Adventure. So maybe it's something like that as well.
Yeah, that could be. I think the 3DS idea makes a lot of sense. Although I did check the proportions of the image because I'm a dork, and they don't match up with the 3DS's resolution. But that could just be because they cropped it. And the image they tweeted out does look pretty low quality, which is something you'd expect from the 3DS one. So yeah, who knows, that definitely could be. But how about you, Chris? You weren't on our previous Rayman discussion, so what do you think about having this third-party trophy, basically a third-party trophy, appear in the game? Although we have since learned that the game Rayman Legends was actually published by Nintendo Japan, which might actually explain why he's here. But what are your thoughts on this?
So I know there's a lot of people who are probably more sad about this news, if anything, because they're like, oh, I wanted him to be a playable character, because I know I have plenty of friends who were hankering for Rayman since he kind of made his big comeback recently to be a candidate for this. And
that's definitely not Ash Paulson or Derek Bindner.
No, it certainly wasn't.
I think it's cool that at the very least they're having, these kind of outreaches of, hey, look at some of these characters. Because, I mean, in the previous games, they had a lot of these trophies of, characters that weren't even, at the level of being an assist trophy or a hazard or anything like that. They'd have, stuff like, what is it, in Melee, they had that little character from Devil World or whatever, I forget his name, but sometimes when they'll have just these little tributes, and because that's the whole point of these unlockables is little bits of history from Nintendo's library of games and everything that kind of comes with it and everything. So I think even though Rayman, I guess, is not considered by the dev team to be this isn't one that we want to have way up there enough for consideration for the gameplay elements, but it's still part of Nintendo's history. There were plenty of Rayman games on Nintendo systems, and clearly there's some attachment from having it be published in Japan by us. So why not? We'll throw a little trophy in there. So I think it's just a polite gesture to have him in there in the first place, and even though some people, I guess, aren't fully satisfied with that. So.
Yeah, well, some people are never going to be satisfied. Okay, well, that's enough about Rayman, because we've already talked about the thing a ton. Let's talk about the other pictures from Monday, because we're still on Monday. So the other two pictures that showed off were of Robin and Captain Falcon. Now, me and Derek have already discussed these two but relatively in-depth. But again, Ash, you weren't on our last discussion, and neither was Chris. So let's get your guys' quick take on these two additions to the cast.
Well, Robin, I think it's a pretty cool addition. I mean, I know a lot of people were expecting Chrom, but honestly, we've actually come upon the reasoning for Chrom's kind of not making the roster, and it actually makes a lot of sense to me. I always wondered how they would have differentiated Chrom from Marth and Ike, and I think Sakurai kind of agree with that. And now here we have Robin, who's the first ever kind of red mage type character where you can do. He's like a Mystic Knight type guy who can do both sword fighting and magic, and I think it's cool. It's a unique character that Smash hasn't really seen yet, and it's also a unique character in terms of Fire Emblem itself. I mean, I think it's kind of cool that we now have 3 sword users and, you know, kind of a red mage to mix things up a little.
With Robin in particular, so completely unexpected. As you guys were kind of saying before, a very pleasant surprise. It's fun to still be surprised about the stuff that they've been revealing about this game. Really, really cool mechanics, and as I'm sure everybody on Twitter has been bugging me with, yes, Tome confirmed for Smash Brothers. I'm very happy about this, of course. Multiple thereof of different elements. Yeah, that's super cool. The 11 sword looks really interesting. Very happy that both genders. Was kind of hoping that the female one would kind of be the main one that they utilize, because I feel like and then Robin comes in to save Lucina. It's just like, okay, that's not chauvinistic or sexist at all, whatever. But either way, just from purely a gameplay perspective, it's like, hey, that's really cool, really unique, interesting kind of swordsman character. That's different. Totally on board with that.
You definitely hit the nail on the head there with with this being a surprise, you know, as we talked about before. It's something, not many people expected. And that continued into Tuesday, where we found out more about Lucina, you know, which also was a surprise character. Sakurai notes that she basically is a Marth clone, except that her power, instead of being concentrated in the tip of the sword, is actually balanced alongside, or along the whole weapon. And then he goes on to mention that he kind of explains why she's a different character. Because he mentioned he was considering making her an alternative character, but because there is a difference in how she plays, even a slight difference, that makes her own character slot. Whereas if you're just purely a costume change, then you can be an alt. You know, like the Wii Fit Trainer or Villager or something along those lines. And then finally he adds that there's a small detail you can see in her eye, apparently the mark of Naga. So that's all pretty cool. And there's actually something more I want to discuss about that. But first, let's again get your guys' quick impressions, Ash and Chris, since we haven't gotten them yet about this edition.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm really happy to see that there's a female Fire Emblem rep now with Lucina. I do kind of wish that, you know, the first female rep would have gotten to not be a clone. It just seems to kind of quell the hype a little regarding her her reveal. But I'm still happy to finally have a female character from Fire Emblem. It seems like she'll be kind of an easier version of Marth to use, just because her strength and her sword is spread throughout her entire blade, whereas Marth's is focused at the tip. So it seems like she's kind of an easier kind of pick up and play version of Marth, and I think she'll be fun to use, especially if you're a fan of Marth. And I think it's neat that she got to be her own character instead of just an alt costume.
So Lucina's differences between the gameplay of her sword, the elements of that, are similar to Roy. Obviously without the sort of fire effects to it like in Melee, but the differences between Marth and Roy's sort of clone aspects of each other was that same thing as this time. Marth had the strength of his blade in the tip of it, like he was fencing, and then with Roy, the strength of his blade was in the body of it. Lucina seems to carry that sort of attribute to it, and obviously she has the same beam moves and everything, probably a lot of the same smash attacks and everything as well, which I believe Roy did too in Melee. But yeah, so I'm kind of wondering like what else about her is different, and like really enough for Sakurai to want to make her into a separate character.
I kind of feel like there must be more differences between Lucina and Marth, only because if the only difference so far is that the strength is spread throughout her sword, then that seems like it would make her kind of like the new version of the new version of Marth, whereas it doesn't take necessarily as much skill or consideration to use her. So I feel like she must have some sort of weakness to make up for it.
Well, that could be her weakness. Maybe her attacks just aren't, or at least her sword attacks, I guess which would be all their attacks, just aren't as strong, just across the board.
I do think there are going to be many more differences than just the sword, and you know, please let there be, because it's causing a lot of debate. Like, people are not sure they want Lucina in there just because there's so little difference. It makes them think, what's the point? And yeah, you can argue the whole thing about, you know, take Lucina and have her replace Marth completely. But Marth is sort of that legacy character now, and you know that's who people recognize. Non-Fire Emblem players recognize the Fire Emblem series through Marth because he's the one that's been there the entire time. So it's this weird type of thing where they like the way they described it and the way they tried to like justify her almost turned people against her.
Well, to be fair, Sakurai's comments didn't really help, because it really just seemed like he was stressing the fact that she, like, he pretty much just threw it out there that she is a straight-up clone. Like, the way he worded his post, and from the translations we have from his article in Japan, it really sounds like there are almost no differences.
It really does. Yeah, I mean, he's not really helping. I'm torn on it. I'm glad she's a new female Fire Emblem rep, but I do wish she could have been more than the clone, and I'm still kind of banking on the fact that she'll be more than what we've seen so far. Yeah, just clones really aren't that new a thing, and I don't see why people are so surprised.
Moving on to Wednesday, we get some more details on Robin, and I'll actually hand this one off to you, Derek, because you did the analysis and you have a pretty good understanding of how this guy is going to work. So you want to explain some of these moves here?
So basically, it turned out that I was actually kind of right with my the analysis this week. And yeah, Arcfire is his side special, Elwind is his recovery, and Nosferatu is his down special, which is actually more effective from behind a character, which is kind of interesting. The only thing I was kind of right, kind of wrong on is the thunder attacks, which I assumed were chargeable, but I couldn't see them being charged as they were using the higher up ones. What I didn't take into consideration, and I kind of feel like an idiot for not, is it works basically like Samus, where you can charge it up and store it and use it for later, which is, it's honestly kind of cool. But probably the strangest part of Robin's moveset, at least his special attacks, is that each of these attacks have a limited use. Eventually his tome will run out and he'll toss it away and not be able to use it for a little while. And Sakurai hasn't come out and fully said how long it takes for these things to recover. It doesn't sound like it's too long, but this is still something that could put you in a bind. Like, you get knocked away and, oh crap, I'm all out of Elwind for my recovery, and I'm just sort of screwed. But it's also connected to his Levin sword, which we couldn't quite figure out either. It turns out that the Levin sword is also a very limited use item, but it gets pulled out during smash attacks. And uniquely for Robin, he can actually perform smash attacks in the air, which I think is the only character able to do that. So that makes him very unique as far as a combat. So you got to really take...
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
It's really all about managing your items and your specials and deciding when's the best to use the Levin sword, when's best to use the bronze sword, which is what it defaults to whenever the Levin sword breaks and you have to wait for it to come back. So it's very interesting how he's set up, and actually very true to how Fire Emblem plays, which I kind of respect that he really brought in the style.
Yeah, I was going to say, he seems like a really strategic character, which is right in line with him coming from a strategy game. That's really cool. They're doing something, really interesting things with him.
Well, something I found interesting is that Sakurai's word choice here in this update. He says the Levin sword and tomes are Robin's lifelines, which tells me that if both your tomes and the Levin sword breaks and you're stuck with no magic and only the bronze sword, I feel like it's going to severely nerf Robin. I feel like this is a character that really relies on the tools he has and utilizing them properly, because I feel like they're kind of telling us here that a Robin without any of these things is almost maybe as worthless as like one ice climber.
Andre, you pretty much hit exactly what I was going to say, was that I think it's interesting that they made him a character that all the characters you have to think, strategically with in some regard, but more so you really have to plan absolutely every single move that you make with this character, to really be effective with it. Which I think is a fair trade-off, since it really looks like a lot of his Levin sword attacks and his tome magic attacks hit very, very hard, so it seems like a pretty fair trade-off.
Because he brings an entirely new playstyle to Smash that we haven't seen before, and just for that reason alone, even I haven't played Fire Emblem Awakening yet, so I don't have a lot of personal connection to this character, but despite that, just the fact that his or her playstyle is so different than what we've ever seen in Smash before makes me want to really kind of check Robin out and see if I can play them effectively.
Alright, so it was a pretty good week so far, but then on Thursday, the announcements came to a screeching halt with another look at the Nintendogs Arena. Showing off, the cats from Nintendogs plus cats.
And the internet erupted.
Not in a good way.
it was just, just a filler update. It's fine. But there's really not that much to discuss, really, because we've already talked about this arena in depth before. We did learn that there are about 5 dog breeds in the game, which is kind of odd to me, actually. I don't know why it's about 5 dog breeds. Like,
I know, it's either 5 or it's not, right? I thought the same thing.
Well, if you include butts and, all that stuff, then it gets complicated. And
yeah, cat. That's another dog breed.
Cats.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I guess going off of that, I can't remember, or cat, remember? I can't remember if we saw this cat breed before. I feel like this one's different.
It might be.
So that might confirm, multiple cat breeds as well, which isn't that surprising.
Cats confirmed for Smash Brothers. It's what everybody wanted.
So it sounds like all of us, if we had to choose between dogs and cats, would all choose dogs, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a dog person.
I'm
both. So I'm actually glad cats.
And there goes the dislike bar on this video.
You are the only reason that the whole internet isn't like
I
destroying
saved
us
it.
right
This is
now.
Raymond all over again.
Yeah, honestly, I'd just rather have the Nintendogs stage stay Nintendogs. I don't need cats all up in my Smash.
Wow, jeez.
Shots fired, right? No, actually, no. I love kittens. I'm just not a big
that
fan.
dislike bar is just
Tactile, yeah. This is alright. We better move on. This is getting ugly. All right, moving on to Friday, which actually is legitimately one of my favorite screenshots ever, just because I think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And it's a great representation of what we actually saw at E3 with how the how it works now when characters get smashed off the top of the screen and now smash into the screen, where it's even more comical than before, because it kind of like they hang there for like just a little bit longer, and you just see this awesome impression of them on the screen. I love this. Like, it's another like little cute detail they're adding that even adds more character to these characters, I feel like.
No, I totally agree, and this is always something I wanted to see come back. I'm glad it has. And it actually kind of reminds me. This is kind of esoteric, but it kind of reminds me of the old 1989 Ninja Turtles arcade game, where if you threw foot soldiers against a wall, they kind of stick there and then slowly slide down.
Oh,
it was kind of. It looks exactly like that. Or when the turtles get knocked against a wall, It reminds me exactly of that. And
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I'd like to point out that we're having a very rare appearance of Mario's neck in this. By the way, it's not something not something you generally see.
Whoa, you're right. It exists.
And we also, it's funny. I know that's not actually what it is, but the way the shadowing on the glass makes it look like Little Mac has like battle damage.
Well, he kind of does, because he has a Band-Aid.
Do you think he does?
He has that Band-Aid on his cheek.
Yeah, but doesn't he already have a Band-Aid though? Like, isn't that his default?
No,
he
I
doesn't.
don't think so.
Oh, my bad. Then I guess it really is taking battle damage. Interesting.
Yeah, it is a little nice touch where he has that Band-Aid there.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's actually battle damage or if it's something he just gets from being KO'd.
Oh, maybe.
That
That would make more sense.
I mean, either way, it's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's probably just for this KO, like they just added to the model whenever he gets knocked into the screen.
That
but
would
it's
make
still
more
a
sense,
really cool detail and a nice reference to the original games.
Yeah.
I think this is the most un-JoJo Bizarre Adventure he's ever looked in every single pose he's doing like some like weird JoJo reference. In this one he's just like, no, I'm just a dork and I'm gonna fall off and die now.
Yeah.
I mean, I love this new animation here because it was always funny with the earlier games how they'd bounce off the front of the screen. It was the first time you'd see it, you'd just get a chuckle out of me. But I got that same chuckle playing the demo at E3 and seeing these guys just get flattened against the screen and then just slowly slide off. And it was, I love that each one has a different animation. I can't wait to see them all.
Yeah, but if I recall correctly, that was a detail they added to Brawl, which I love. But again, it wasn't really that unique to each character. They just all kind of like flew into the screen and bounced off immediately. Whereas they are now getting a more unique thing. But what was part of the previous Smash games were the Star KOs that would appear in the background. And we actually learned something interesting about them here, because they do return, but Sakurai clarifies that they no longer happen when the match is near the end. Which is, I mean, it's a super minor change. I don't think anyone would really even notice had they not pointed it out here. But it's interesting nonetheless. And I think that's because I've seen numerous times where like you KO someone and they're in the process of appearing as a star, but it never happens because it takes way longer than being slammed into the screen. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that or anything else about this?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head onto why they did that. It's because the time limit is almost coming to an end. You need to get in those last bit of kills, or you want to get that kill before the time runs out. So it's a good idea to get rid of those. That way you can maximize it and have those really fun comebacks.
Yeah, I totally agree. Though I wonder how many people actually notice this, because the vast majority of people I feel play stock. with no time limit.
True enough.
Oh, that's kind of a good point.
Yeah.
Alright, well I think that wraps up our Smash Brothers discussion, so thanks guys for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplained, which you can find links to in the description below. And of course, make sure to check out Chris's YouTube channel at Kirbopher15 for a bunch of cool did you know voice acting gaming videos. I think I said that wrong, but close enough. And of course, stay tuned to GameXplained.com for more on Smash Brothers Wii U and 3DS and other things gaming as well. Alright, thanks guys. Bye.